So here are the top MPC plugins I can't imagine my work without. Let's start with a melodic sample, and here I have two plugins of stereo width. Let me put you in context. So this is the project, which sounds like this. Alright, the melodic sample. Why do I have two instances of stereo width? That's quite simple, because if I switch all those plugins off, oh my god, you can see that something is in the left ear and something is to the right. So when I have a situation like this, it's not a problem for me. The first plugin, stereo width, you see it's trimmed 100% to the right. So to the right, I get the mono signal out of my right ear. However, without this second plugin, I would have something like this. Only the right ear signal. If I change the width in this plugin to 0%, it will not change the situation. I still have the sound only in one ear. So for that scenario, I use the second stereo width plugin. And in here, I change the width to 0. And now everything that was in the right speaker became in the center. Mono. I always use this trick, and most importantly, in the first stereo width plugin, I can have not 100% of my right signal or left signal. I can have something like 61, so it will give me, for example, I have like trumpet and some like piano in my right ear. In the left, I have I don't know, the drums barely audible somewhere in the background, and I want to keep all of them, but I want to focus on the melody, on the melodic instruments. So I, change my perspective view to this ear, and I leave the drums somewhere barely audible in the distance, but they still are in this groove. And it's a very artistic choice of where to focus on our attention. I like stereo width plugin, and this is definitely my keeper. When it comes to layering, and you know that in hip-hop, layering is very important. We need to focus on some certain frequencies, either on the low range, mid-range, or high range. If we want to focus on the bass, we roll off everything from the top and middle range, and vice versa. In here, I have this sample from the main sample. I like this, it gives some, atmosphere, and together with the melodic sample, it gives this sound. However, this is without this, and it already gives a lot more atmosphere. However, let's focus on the original sound of this. Very different from what we have. Why? Let's dive deep. Kill EQ. This is one of my favorite plugins when I need to kill some frequencies. Absolutely. So I have mid, which is playing, and low and highs are switched off. So instead of, I have only this. Parametric EQ. This is my go-to plugin. This is the best EQ plugin in MPC. I absolutely like parametric EQ, and I don't suffer from not having a visual EQ, although we have the multi-band filter bank, which gives visual representation. But I don't need it necessarily, because I have all the controls in here, the highs, the lows, and everything. The second page is quite important, because in here we can roll off everything from the, for example, from the low frequencies, from the high frequencies, but I don't need it in this example, but from the low, of course. And I can make some changes in the frequency range. For example, the high mid is too harsh. This is more, yeah, this is nicer. But I killed this decay, this reverberation, and I use one of my next favorite plugins, which is a simple air delay, but it works, it gets the job done. And there is some tail. Of course, I can increase if I need it. And there is a big question whether I should use the delay or reverb on the track itself, or whether I should use them on a, not a submix, but on a return track. And the answer is simple. You can try both ways. You can try using it on the track and on the return track as well. And I made a separate video on this topic. You can watch this after watching this video. But in this scenario, it doesn't really matter because this delay is used for the artistic, stylistic purposes. And I use it only on this track. So I decided to go and apply this effect on the track itself. Not a crime. And now we're moving to our drums. And drums, it's very important for all hip-hop tracks. Not only hip-hop, but we're talking about hip-hop. And drums can either make a track or spoil a track. Let's listen with plugins and without plugins. So without plugins, it's very thin, although it's not a dramatic change in the drums, but still, I can definitely notice the difference in the professional headphones. Not maybe you're watching on iPhone, maybe you don't hear the difference as much as I hear it right now. But still, let's go through the plugins, and we have our usual parametric EQ, which I have already mentioned. This is one of my favorite EQ plugins, and I just boosted the low frequencies because let me switch off all other plugins for now, because this is originally a drum break recorded from a vinyl, and of course in the 70s they didn't bother with making boomy drums because it wasn't the purpose. The drums weren't in the center of attention. So I just cut out some high frequencies because it was quite harsh in the highs and just boosted the low end where my kick is. That's alright. Then compressor, and this is an incredibly important tool in music production and music editing. And on my MPC course, we discuss compression in much detail in one of our lessons. Right here, I'm not going to turn this video into a lecture about compression, but let's have a look. The most important place to look at is the reduction bar, this golden bar. So my compression right now is quite moderate at about -5 decibels because I can see it's not hitting the 10, maybe 6-5 decibels like this. It's 100%, so it's not parallel. And of course, when you apply compression to the drums, you need to understand which style you're working in, what genre, or most specifically, what is the mood of your track. If it's punchy, aggressive, and you need to keep this punchiness and aggressiveness, of course, you need to have a slower attack and a faster release. Why do I say slower? Faster, not slow and fast, because I know you. If I say slow attack, you would put it like this, and if I say fast release, you would put it at these settings, which is maybe sometimes it's correct, but of course it's too much. It's exaggeration. Yes, that's why I say slower, and even this kind of attack is already slow because it's 2 milliseconds and so on and so forth. So you just listen what it means actually, slow attack or fast attack and so on and so forth. If you want to have your drums punchy with presence of transients, you need to have a slower attack and a faster release. Not like this, not like that. This way you keep all those transients and you let the compressor back again so it captures the new incoming signal. Like this. Okay, and again, it's moderate compression. It's not crazy because I want to keep like the track. As you can hear, it's restrained aggression. Yes, it's not very aggressive. I don't need exaggerated drums in this scenario. But if you need those overly exaggerated drums, of course, you should apply probably parallel compression with crazier settings. We'll talk about that later, or actually we discuss it again at our course. Then, my next favorite plugin. You need to pay for this plugin, but it's definitely worth it in my opinion. If you know the plugin on the computer RC20, which is extremely popular for everyone. This is the local RC20, so to say. Sometimes I even like it more than RC20. Anyway, it's just right in front of you in a standalone form factor. What it does? Well, Flavor Pro, it's a Flavor Pro. You should just try this plugin. Well, this is one of those plugins that distort your sound, that make it worse. Yes, that worsen your sound, but in a very, very good way. In here I have just some slight distortion. Then I have, timbre, Studio Old. I just went through the settings, through the presets. I didn't add any vinyl noise because, as I mentioned, this is the drum break from a vinyl record, and I already have the real authentic vinyl noise. But if you have just regular one-shots from Splice, you can add some vinyl noise and it will make your drums more like a drum break. And the last but not least is one of my favorite, again, plugins, Air Transient. And this is like a compressor, because if we speak very simply, there are just a couple of plugins out there. There are all different types of compressors, all different types of EQ, and all different types of space, like reverb, delay, and all different types of saturation. So these are the four pillar categories of all the plugins imaginable. Limiter, compressor on steroids. Air Transient, compressor, but with different focus of attention. So again, Air Transient is a perfect plugin for those drum breaks coming from a vinyl. Yes, because from a vinyl, as I mentioned, they weren't meant to be those punchy, aggressive drums. And with Air Transients, after compressor, it adds even more attack and more sustain, or less sustain. In my case, I decided to go for less sustain. Let's listen to before. Not much, but let me increase. Maybe I need these settings. Maybe not. But again, for this track, I decided to go the other way. So my sustain, I lowered my sustain to make the sound, tighter. Yes, not breathing, because when you have longer sustain, it's breathing drums, like ba 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 ba. And quite often we need this effect, but not for that track, not for my track. So before, there is this synthesizer that adds some atmosphere to the sample. Like this. Melodic sample with this It already sounds like very atmospheric track without only this. However, when we listen to this track without the plugins, and by the way, this is the local OPX4. I absolutely love this plugin because it has a lot of weird sounds, unusual sounds in a good way. So if you are looking for some sound to add atmosphere to a sample, definitely check the OPX4 plugin built into your MPC. So let's talk about the plugins that I have. And this is my usual Flavor Pro. So let me switch it off without no texture. Yes, like a vinyl. And this is like the usual preset that I chose because Flavor Pro is great for, scrolling through presets and finding this sound that maybe you didn't need, but then you listen to this preset and wow, this is actually the sound that I needed. Then the parametric EQ, which again cuts out some low frequencies without bass because it's not the bass. And without the plugin, a lot of high end, which I don't need. So I focused my attention on the center of the sound. Remember, yes, center is very important. The next track, and we keep adding the atmosphere to the track. And these are all the James Brown famous grunts. Somewhere just in the background. And let's switch off the effects. It's already nice. However, what do I add? It's one of my next favorite plugins, Spring Reverb. It's like the same reverb that we talked about before. However, it just has a different sound. I can't say you which is better, the air spring reverb or the usual air reverb, because they're different. You should apply this plugin or that plugin to different tracks, listen with your own ears, and don't forget, again, I'm using this spring reverb on the track itself. That's why instead of 100%, which is absolutely crazy, you have 100% if you apply this plugin on the return track, of course. And again, we talked about it in the videos. It will pop up somewhere on the screen and on the course in a lot more detail. But I keep it somewhere at 18-16%, just nice touch of reverb. Delay, we have already mentioned it. And again, I applied it 16% mixing because it's on the track. And this plugin comes next, very nice plugin. Air Lo-Fi. This is the standard plugin that all of us have. And if you have a look here, we have 12-bit 40 kilohertz. So I imitated the sound of SP1200, which I already did in Flavor Pro, but I just decided to add another layer of this saturation, old school saturation. There is some crunch after that. And my next absolutely favorite plugin, it's definitely a secret weapon when it comes to MPC, and not only MPC, is actually, if you watch my videos, you know this is my favorite plugin now. It's Soft Clipper, because when you load the plugin on the track, it instantly makes the sound punchier. It gathers, it collects all your sound in front of you. It makes it in your face, which I like and which we like in hip-hop. Listen to the track before. It's here now. I can increase the drive, and not to be fooled by the extra loudness, I will decrease the post level. Okay, we can be very precise. Let's deselect this plugin. Look at the value right here. Minus, already plus. It's a crime in the music world, but okay, plus 0.24. Let's apply Soft Clipper. You see? You see, it's minus 3 point something decibels. So it's 3 decibels quieter, but in our ears, it feels louder because it's Soft Clipper, it's saturation. Without it, this track disappears. In your face. I absolutely like Soft Clipper. And you can apply it on the master output. You can apply Soft Clipper on each individual track. Of course, you can go crazy and literally every individual track, or drums, melodic sample, and maybe bass, yes, and on the master output, or just main output. So Soft Clipper, it's this secret weapon that makes your tracks better. Not always, not always. Sometimes I apply Soft Clipper to drums and my drums become overly distorted, and I don't need that much of a distortion in some tracks. But in most cases, like I would say 8 out of 10 times, I use Soft Clipper because it's just fantastic. This is my top list of MPC Effect plugins. Write down in the comments, maybe I have forgotten something extremely important. And most probably I have, because from time to time I use different plugins. But these, I guess 10, are my core plugins that I use in almost every single track. And as I have already mentioned, we discuss all these plugins, how they work, when to apply them in a lot more detail at my MPC course. Check the link in the description. And I'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye. Oh my god.